Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This happened about 7 to 8 years ago, and it didn't happen to me directly, but I got to witness how everything unfolds, and it was glorious. I was working at a barber shop to pay through college and had some regulars. One was a guy, we will call him Jim, who was visiting after he joined the military. Jim went to the sub shop next door while he waited for me to make his usual. After he came back and we got up, he realized his iPhone was missing. He went back to the sub shop and the cashier said he hadn't seen it. He checked his car and the bathrooms and it was nowhere to be found. He borrowed someone else's phone to check the phone's location, but it was turned off. Now he knew someone took it because he didn't have his phone off. He called the police to file a report. The papa shop was close to the station, so they came over within minutes. I was also friends with the manager of the sub shop next door and called him to look out for an iPhone and if someone took it in the shop. The manager came in not too long after while the police were taking Jim's statement, and he retracted his step. The manager found the phone in the chip rack in the sub shop. The chip rack was located in the middle of the store where customers can grab some before they pay. Everyone was confused because Jim didn't buy chips. The manager then proceeded to look at the security footage and saw that Jim accidentally left his phone at the cashier counter after paying. The cashier then proceeded to go through the phone and turned it off before pocketing it. We were thinking he was trying to sell it. It was the latest model at the time and cost roughly $1,000. It was so satisfying to see him on the footage freaking out when the cops showed up and the cashier and him running around trying to find out what to do with the phone. Jim got his phone back. The cashier guy was fired on the spot and arrested for grand theft. So, when my grandma was younger, she moved from the countryside to the big city to get a higher paying job. Me and my mom were both born and raised in a big city. Where we still live in the house, she left us here. She's much older now and she moved back to her summer home in the countryside, living there full time because, in her words, it's quieter there and I'm too old to handle the city nowadays. Better leave it to the youngsters. She does come to visit us every few months or so and stays with us for a few weeks. She spends these weeks complaining about how the world has gone crazy and the city is not like what it used to be before. People are so rude nowadays, yada yada, typical boomer stuff. Also, despite our protests, she insists on helping around the house, doing our shopping from her own money and taking on the chores, claiming me and my mom work too much. On one of these days, she decided to go shopping. She has to take me shopping with her, because she can't carry all the bags anymore. Since she always insists on buying too much stuff we don't need, but we know she just wants to help our groceries budget. And she can't take my mom because my mom won't let her pay. I can't talk back to her like my mom, so I usually go with her. I don't know if this is a thing in other countries, but here, there are usually special offers like if your total is above X amount, you get a special discount on Y item. Today, it was a packet of black tea. Now, we hate black tea as a family. My emotionally abusive dad loved black tea, and he would talk me and my mom's ears off about his tea time, ordering us around to bring his tea at specific times with very specific brewing methods. He would never differentiate between the taste if we brewed it wrong though. I know this because I would spit in his tea and purposely make things wrong, and he would never realize. He would pitch a fit if we did it wrong when he was watching us brew it though. This is off topic, but I just want you to understand that we have trauma about black tea and never had it in the house after we kicked him out. So we are waiting in line and there is this Karen in front of us berating the cashier about not scanning items fast enough. She barks, "And the special discount tea after you're done too." We're already annoyed because she has this screechy voice. I'm starting to think all Karens generally get that kind of voice because every word that comes out of their mouths is so unpleasant, their vocal cords start rotting. The cashier warned her that her total did not add up to the required amount, so she won't get the discount. She can still buy it from the regular price though. Karen has a brilliant idea as she subtly sweetens her voice.
Oh, just add mine to this auntie's if she does come up with that amount, please.
She gestures to Grandma without even looking at us once, like we don't actually exist. Now Grandma takes no nonsense from anyone, and in true boomer fashion, she can be a bit of a Karen herself. So I immediately grab her arm to prevent her from starting a mess. Cashier thankfully takes over and says, "I can't do that, ma'am. This lady might also want the item for herself." Karen, still not having acknowledged us, counters with,
"But I have kids at home. Do you want them to starve?"
"Seriously, lady, it's tea. You know they will be more hungry if they drink it, right?" Grandma gestures to me, her 182cm tall granddaughter, and yells, "Well, I have kids too, and I'm not going to get that tea. You can pay the full price for all I care." Karen looks me up and down. I guess she has a right to do so because, well, I'm pretty big. Twice the size of my tiny grandma even. So it actually looks funny. Nevertheless, she tries again. Her voice less sweet and more commanding this time.
"Come on, auntie. Don't be a mean old lady. My kids need tea. They really like this brand and they have been doing very good at school, so they deserve it. Just give it to us."
With this, my grandma launches into a tirade about how rude youngsters like her are nowadays. How she didn't even ask first or offer to pay. How her kids deserve a better mother before they deserve some tea. How I probably deserve it more than her kids because I just started my first job after graduating. Seriously, was that part necessary? How she should mind her own appearance before assuming someone is their auntie. And so on. Karen knows she can't win against the tiny grandma at this point. She pays in a hurry during this lecture as scurries out the door. Oh well, now I'm just worried about grandma's heart rate at this point. We bought the tea and brought it home anyway. We're gonna bake a cake and try drinking it. Now my grandma is pestering me, asking me if I have any leftover dye, and can I please dye her hair because, in her words, these jerks see her gray hair and think of her as an easy target. Are you sure you want pink hair, Grandma? And she's also complaining to my mom that I held her back, and she couldn't pull the hair extensions off of that witch one by one and make her eat them. You have a weak heart, old lady, sit down. The moral of the story is, the best way to deal with a Karen is to be a Karen yourself, I guess. It was a hot summer day, and I was 7 months pregnant. I took a ride to the grocery store trying to gather all the items on my list. I was tired and hungry, and all I wanted was to make this trip as short as possible. Go home and get rest. As I was walking through the crowded parking lot, I spotted a car backing out of a spot up ahead. I hurried up and was relieved to see that it was finally my turn to park. As I was maneuvering my car into the spot, I heard a voice shouting behind me. I turned to see a woman storming towards me, and a look of anger on her face.
"What do you think you're doing taking this spot?"
The woman yelled. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize someone was waiting for it," I replied, trying to stay calm.
"You're lying."
The woman, Karen, spat out.
"I saw you waiting here for ages, trying to steal my spot."
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Me? Here for ages? I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to cause any trouble. I'm just trying to park my car and go to the store. But Karen wasn't listening. She was fuming with anger, her face red with rage.
"You're always taking things that don't belong to you, just because you think you're entitled to them. Well, you're not entitled to this spot, and you're not entitled to walk all over me."
I was starting to feel scared. She's talking to me as if we've known each other for ages. I never saw that woman before in my life. At this point, I was pregnant and alone, and this woman seemed to be getting more and more aggressive. I tried to back away, but Karen followed me, continuing to shout and curse. "Please, stop yelling at me," I begged. "I'm sorry if I did something wrong, okay? But I didn't mean to. Can't we just go our separate ways and forget about this?" But Karen wasn't interested in making peace. She was too wrapped up in her own anger and entitlement. With a loud growl, she lunged at me and pushed me to the ground. I fell hard, landing awkwardly on my side. I cried out in pain as I felt a sharp jolt in my back. Karen didn't even stop to check if I was okay. She just stormed off into the store, leaving me lying there alone and terrified. A group of people rushed over to help me, and one of them called the police. As I waited for the ambulance to arrive, I couldn't stop shaking. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had done nothing to deserve this treatment, and yet I had been attacked by a complete stranger just because I had dared to park in a spot that Karen felt entitled to. By the way, she was nowhere near the spot when I spotted it. She was completely lying. When the police arrived, I told them what had happened. The cops went inside the store, and Karen was arrested and charged with assault. As I was being treated at the hospital for my injuries, I couldn't stop thinking about Karen and the anger and the entitlement that had driven her to commit such a violent act. After Karen was arrested and charged with assault for pushing me, a pregnant woman, to the ground, she faced a grave penalty for her actions. The incident had been witnessed by several people, and there was clear evidence against Karen. She was found guilty and sentenced to prison. The judge was harsh in his punishment, recognizing the gravity of Karen's crime. Not only had she attacked a pregnant woman, but she had also shown no remorse for her actions. Karen's entitlement and anger had led her to commit a violent, unacceptable act, and the judge wanted to send a strong message that such behavior would not be tolerated. Karen's sentence was several years in prison, and she was also required to complete anger management classes and community service upon her release. It was a harsh punishment, but one that Karen deserved. Thank God I was okay. The baby was okay, and nothing bad happened to any of us. This was a while ago, but it still irritates me on how some passengers cannot understand when something happens that is out of our own control. Also, I'm trying to limit how much to disclose in case someone recognizes this. On this particular day, there was a major security incident at the airport I used to work at. So many areas and services were shut down. The supervisor and myself were explaining to the crew that there was an incident and that it would take them time for their bags to arrive. This was when the entitled passenger showed up screaming, "Where are my bags? I demand that you send my bags down now." Sir, there was an incident at the airport, and we are trying to resume normal operations. I don't care if there is a security incident and something happens to you all. I want my bags now. Sir, you would have to wait for your bags like all the passengers. This is out of our control. I will file a complaint against this airline, and I will have everyone here fired. Sir, what would you like me to do? This is out of my control. The entitled passenger walks away, and while me, my supervisor and crew were all enraged and disgusted by what happened, later on a late baggage announcement was done by our agent. We could not tell the passengers what exactly happened, as we did not want to induce a major panic at the airport. The entitled passenger comes back and walks up to me and screams at me, "You're a freaking liar! I want my baggage now!" Me fuming at this point, I snapped, "Sir, a security incident happened. It's out of the airline's control. Also, I did not lie. I demand to speak to your manager. I am the manager for the day. Then I demand to speak to your superiors. They aren't here, and they already know what's going on." I informed my superiors about this incident early on when I got word about it from the company that owns the airport. Then give me someone who can get me my bags now. Why don't you call the company that owns the airport? We are following the security guidelines set forth. We are not going to risk our jobs just to grab your bags and bring them here. Airport staff cannot do this as we could get arrested for either theft or smuggling. I was not going to tell the staff to do what the entitled passenger demanded, as I didn't want him fired or arrested for breaking the law. At this point, the cabin crew steps in between us and tells the entitled person What happened then that I cannot tell what exactly happened, but the entitled passenger walked away angry. At this point, I walked away to handle another issue from another passenger. A couple minutes later, everyone's bags started coming down the belt. Did not see the entitled passenger again, thankfully. For those who are asking, this was not a domestic flight. It was an international flight, so this means passengers, crew, and baggage need to clear customs. My wife and I spent 4 years trying to get pregnant before the wrong side of 35. We are currently 33 respectively now and are blessed with a wonderful infant son. My wife has a younger half-sister that has been low contact with for some time. The woman is entitled and toxic, and also her mother's golden child. We've refused to let her or my mother-in-law in the house since they both blatantly tried to make off with my wife's jewelry box a couple of years ago. The box contained a lot of valuable jewelry inherited from my wife's grandma. Said jewelry is now in a safety deposit box as per my suggestion. My wife and I had nearly given up trying to conceive when it suddenly happened. And we were ecstatic. After we found out we were having a boy. We started looking into names. I ended up suggesting the name of my Scottish grandfather, and my wife loved it. So that's the name we settled on. But we made the mistake of posting about it on social media. Well, no surprise to the stereotype in this mess. My sister-in-law was pregnant too, and was months further along than my wife, and also having a boy. She decided to claim my grandfather's name for her own son, and not just the first name, but the middle name too. We called her pissed over what she was doing, and she smugly told us there is nothing we can do about it, which she was sorta right. There was nothing we could do about it legally, as it's still not a crime to steal planned baby names. We realized that drama was exactly my sister-in-law wanted, and she thought that by taking the name for herself, we'd not be able to use it. I laughed and told her that, while what she did was dirty and underhanded, we would keep our chosen name, and she could just deal with it whether she decides to go through with copying us or not. When my sister-in-law's baby daddy called me and said I was an unreasonable jerk for still wanting to use a name after sister-in-law claimed it, I said she claimed nothing, and since we couldn't own the name, then neither could they. Before he ended the call, he threatened me by saying, "I will be sorry if we didn't change the name." Then he hung up before I could respond. Months later, sister-in-law has a healthy baby boy and names him my grandfather's name. We did not show up for the purse, both because of the virus and because we simply didn't care to be there. Sister-in-law called us wanting congratulations, but we told her we simply didn't care, and that if she was still insisting we change our baby's name, then she'd be in for some big disappointment because we are not. Sister-in-law demanded I put my wife on the phone, but it was already on speaker and my wife spoke up and said she agrees with me entirely. We weren't changing the name. Sister-in-law hung up on us, but soon started sending emails with text walls of names, even suggesting similar ones. I responded back that the name was from my grandfather, and that's why we were not changing it. She shut up and we didn't hear from her again till after our own son was born. 2 months later we were blessed with our son. He came out perfect, and we named him just as we'd intended. Well, no surprise my sister-in-law called us a few days after the birth to scream in our ears that we copied her son's name. I pointed out she was a real copycat since she had no familial ties to the name, and we did. And anyone who looks at our family trees could see that. Then my wife spoke and said after the attempted theft of her grandmother's jewelry, she no longer considered sister-in-law her sister and would have nothing to do with her nephew either. For months we were bombarded with messages and emails from my wife's side of the family. Half were on our side after finding out the whole story. The other half were not. And sister-in-law's baby daddy, true to his word, showed up at my door to make me sorry. I am not sure what his plan was, but I pretty much towered over him. I'm 6'1", and well built from regular exercise and 3 trips to the gym a week. He, on the other hand, was a very skinny, about 5'6", with a baby face that was badly hidden by a slim beard. I told him my house has cameras and to get off my property and never come back. He just yelled a few obscenities at me and drove off in his beat-up old car. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law called us from a different number to yell at me for making sister-in-law's baby daddy feel bad. I didn't even threaten the man, just told him to leave and not come back. And if he didn't want to feel bad, then he shouldn't have come knocking. Then they tried to bring up the issue of the baby name again and demanded we change our son's name as he's so young, so there is still plenty of time to do it. We held our ground and told them that they were bonkers to still think they were in the right after they copied our choice of name just to try and get one over us. I said sister-in-law didn't even name her son out of love, but out of spite just to try and stick it to my wife for no good reason. Then my wife called them both out on the way she was treated growing up, how the entitled sister-in-law and mother-in-law have always been, and how she was glad to leave them far behind. And she simply wants nothing from them, and they won't have anything from us. That left sister-in-law sopping, and mother-in-law called me a royal jerk before hanging up the phone. That was no contact again for a little while, till sister-in-law called us again sometime later to bitterly tell us we'd won. She and her baby daddy got in a huge fight, and he left. He was apparently very sore that sister-in-law didn't let him even give their son a middle name from his family. And he said he was sick of that nonsense and wanted his son named after him and not some guy he wasn't even related to. Sister-in-law finally caved, and they got the boy's birth certificate reissued with a completely new name, which cost sister-in-law around $500 or so, she claims. Sister-in-law then demanded we at least compensate her for the name change, plus another $100 for the emotional damage, as now she's going to have to get used to calling her son by a different name. We laughed and said this would have never happened if she hadn't stolen our baby name to begin with. We didn't owe her anything. Since then, we've gone no contact with sister-in-law and mother-in-law. But my father-in-law, who's a very nice man and divorced from mother-in-law for obvious reasons, would come by often and loves his grandson. From what he and other relatives told us, the situation between sister-in-law and her baby daddy was pretty tumultuous. But we don't care. Not our monkeys, not our circus. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.